Forged in the fires of war, the Silver Templars are amongst the galaxy's newest Space Marine chapters. They fuse the combat skill and tactical prowess of the Scions of Guilliman with boundless fury and a desire to prove their worth to the Imperium. The Silver Templars are direct successors of the Ultramarines, and one of the many Space Marine chapters who can trace their bloodline to the Primarch Robert Guilliman. They are direct successors of the Ultramarines and continue their legacy as defenders of the Imperium. Created during the Ultima founding, they were born into a time of upheaval, war, and destruction. Their ranks are made up entirely of Primaris Space Marines, the newest additions to the ranks of the Adeptus Astartes. The Silver Templars differ from most Ultramarines' successor chapters. Where most of Guilliman's sons embody his discipline, tactical acumen, and talent for leadership, the Silver Templars inherited his fury, skill at arms, and utter loyalty to the ideals of the Imperium. They are duelists supreme, experts with any weapon they choose to wield, and eager to display this skill against the forces of chaos and the many alien races that plague the galaxy. The Silver Templars have gained a reputation as cold and utterly focused warriors who display little emotion. They are expert duelists, preferring to select a single target and focus their attention on eliminating this chosen opponent before selecting a fresh target. Silver Templars' strategy often revolves around carving a path to enemy leaders, so that their most powerful warriors can engage the foe in a final and decisive duel to the death. The Silver Templars are accomplished weaponsmiths, often crafting their own weapons and establishing a link with its machine spirit, known as the Bond Marshal. Once this bond is established, a Silver Templar will devote himself to mastering the weapon's use. Losing a bonded weapon is a mark of great shame, and a Silver Templar will go to great lengths to reclaim one. Born into a galaxy riven by war, the Silver Templars are eager to prove themselves to their Primarch and their Emperor, throwing themselves into combat against the Imperium's countless foes. The Silver Templars' home planet of Novaris is a vast world of warring kingdoms, savage tribes, and colossal mountain ranges. The bravest, boldest, and most resilient of Novaris's youth are selected by the Silver Templars as potential recruits. They are first taken to the foothills beneath the fortress monastery Colossus, where their martial skills are tested in duels to the death. The few that survive these deadly combats must ascend to the peak of Novaris's tallest mountain, Mythicus. The final few who survive the climb may then begin the process of becoming a Primaris Space Marine. This process is long and potentially deadly, involving several surgeries and the implanting of no less than 22 new internal organs, all grown from the gene seed of their Primarch. These organs work with the initiate's own body tissues, stimulating natural abilities such as muscle growth, as well as granting them new abilities. The surgeries are accompanied by a harsh routine of physical and spiritual training. This is achieved through hypnotic suggestion, meditation, psychological and spiritual testing, as well as an induction into the culture and traditions of the chapter. Only then are the survivors fully inducted into the ranks of the Silver Templars. Novaris is the newly christened chapter planet of the Silver Templars. It is a large world of huge oceans, soaring mountain ranges, vast deserts, and dense mangrove swamps. Its people are hardy folk, brilliant swordsmen and expert weaponsmiths. They revere the Silver Templars and see serving them as a great honor. The humans that make Novaris their home live in a low-technology feudal society. Kingdoms both large and small cover the planet, each ruled by noble families. Weaponsmithing is seen as the highest art, and every Novarian warrior must craft his own weapon as a rite of passage. Before Novaris was liberated by the Silver Templars, the planet spent several long decades under the control of the Flawless Host. This Slanesh-worshipping Chaos warband was envious of the quality of craftsmanship displayed by the Novarians, and so they enslaved thousands of the planet's population to make weapons for them. This dark period in Novaris's history was ended when the Indomitus Crusade arrived. The Silver Templars utterly and systematically cleansed the Flawless Host from the planet and saved those Novarians who remained uncorrupted. Novarian warriors are famed for their dueling skill, and many kingdoms will settle disputes with a duel between their most skilled champions. Consequently, dueling has become an important part of the Silver Templars' culture. The chapter's potential recruits are required to attend a grand tournament in the foothills below the fortress monastery of the Silver Templars Colossus. There, aspirants engage in duels to the death in the hope of being among the few chosen to ascend the winding mountain paths to the fortress above. Only then do these aspirants begin the grueling process of becoming a Primaris Space Marine. The Silver Templars are fully compliant with Robert Guilliman's Codex Astartes, comprised entirely of Primaris Space Marines, and incorporating the recent changes to the Codex, they are a cutting-edge force capable of waging war on dozens of fronts. The Silver Templars follow standard Codex structure, consisting of 10 companies of Space Marines, each 100 warriors strong. Each is commanded by a captain who is assisted by a pair of lieutenants, a chaplain, an apothecary, an ancient, and a retinue of veterans. The rest of the company is divided into squads of 10 or 5 warriors. The first company is made up of the chapter's most experienced warriors. Veterans who wish to join the first company's ranks must swear a sword oath to complete a task set by the company's captain. The warriors who swear these oaths must complete them, or die in the attempt. The first company rarely fight as one unit, usually taking to the field alongside other companies. The second, third, fourth and fifth companies are battle companies and do most of the chapter's fighting. They usually consist of 6 battle line squads, 2 close support squads and 2 fire support squads, forming a balanced force to take on any foe. When the Silver Templars go to war, they usually deploy a single battle company supported by troops from the veteran, scout and reserve companies. The reserve companies are each made up of squads of the same designation. The 6th and 7th company are battle line companies. They can be moved into a battle company to replace losses during a campaign. Thank you so much for watching. If you're enjoying this video, please consider subscribing and liking. This helps me make more content from our beloved grim darkness of the far future. For now, let's continue. The 8th Company is the close support company. Reaver and Inceptors from the 8th Company often make up the first wave of an invasion force, disrupting enemy lines and causing panic before the main force arrives. The warriors of the 8th Company are also expert at responding quickly to support their brothers when needed. The 9th Company is the fire support company. It is made up of Hellblasters and other heavy weapons squads. They will often be called to assist a battle company should they need extra firepower. The 10th and final company of the Silver Templars is the Vanguard Company. Each Space Marine is outfitted with lighter Phobos armor. They are often tasked with reconnaissance and infiltration missions. The warriors who would become the Silver Templars were forged in the fury of battle. They served with honor and distinction at the side of their Primarch during the Indomitus Crusade, battling Demon and Xenos alike. Having cleansed the world of Novaris from the taint of the flawless host, they were granted the vast world as their chapter planet, and they were given the task of defending this region of space from the many enemies of mankind. They settled quickly on Novaris, establishing their fortress monastery and replacing their losses from the battle-hardened populace of their newly claimed world. It would not be long, however, before their beloved Primarch called for their services once more. In Guilliman's absence from Ultramar, the Death Guard had invaded in force, devastating several worlds and penetrating as far as Macragge. The Silver Templars did not hesitate when word reached them, dispatching 3 full companies of their most experienced warriors to assist their brothers and liberate Ultramar. All 3 companies fought bravely at the side of their parent chapter, distinguishing themselves in battle against demon hordes and Death Guard warriors alike. It was to be the campaign undertaken by the 3rd Company, however, that solidified the Silver Templars' reputation for fearlessness and bravery in the face of overwhelming odds and devastating losses. Led by Captain Patricius, the 3rd Company arrived in the Ultramar system to join a small force of successor chapters in the defense of the hive world Talasa Secundus. Control of the task force had been given to Captain Aurelius Lobos of the Nova Marines' 5th Company, the most experienced of the Space Marine commanders. By the time the Imperial forces reached the surface, Talasa Secundus was already succumbing to the devastating diseases and viral bombardments unleashed by the Death Guard forces. Much of the human population was infected with foul contagion, coughing their lungs out into the dirt. The fortunate died swiftly. The rest found their souls corrupted and were transformed into boil-encrusted, shambling poxwalkers. The walking dead surged across the surface of the planet, harrying the Space Marines as the Death Guard forces used the distraction to land their Plague Marines. As they fought running battles with hordes of poxwalkers, the Space Marines formed defensive lines around the hive cities and dug in, preparing for the inevitable Plague Marine assault. For weeks, the Space Marines held their lines. The Silver Templars battled back-to-back with their Nova Marines allies, fighting day and night to hold back the press of Death Guard warriors. Assailed on both sides by poxwalkers and heavily armed Plague Marines, the Space Marines eventually began to falter. Sensing weakness, the Death Guard made their final push. In tightly organized infantry formations, the Death Guard swarmed over the Space Marine defenders, reaping a terrible toll on the Imperial lines, their bloated bodies absorbing bolter rounds as they marched forward. The two armies clashed in furious hand-to-hand combat. The Primaris Space Marines were greatly outnumbered, but fought with great skill, picking out opposing champions and besting hulking Plague Marines in brutal duels. Still, the Death Guard came on, climbing over the dead and dying to reach their enemies. Marching amidst his putrid troops was the hulking form of a Death Guard Lord of Contagion. Wherever this giant warrior stepped, the life around him withered and rotted as Nurgle's blessings worked their putrid magic. Captain Patricius knew that he had to act in order to avoid a crushing defeat. Only the death of the Lord of Contagion would halt the Death Guard advance. He would have to engage this mighty enemy in single combat. Meanwhile, the Nova Marines under Captain Lobos were being swamped by demons and Plague Marines. Lobos, seeing that the line would soon break, ordered the Space Marines to fall back to the hive and regroup until reinforcements arrived. Amongst the Silver Templars, however, these calls fell on deaf ears. Patricius had made his decision. He blocked out the enraged bellows of the Nova Marines captain, his mind utterly focused on slaying his chosen target. He ordered his troops to clear a path. The Silver Templars fought with a frighteningly cold precision. They exchanged few words, moving as one to cut through the enemy lines until they were surrounded on all sides by hordes of Plague Marines. Dozens of Silver Templars fell, but eventually they cleared a route to the enemy commander. Patricius wasted no time with words, charging directly towards the scythe-wielding Death Guard Lord. The duel between the two warriors was epic, with the Silver Templars captain suffering terrible wounds that would have killed a lesser man. Despite his injuries, Patricius's superior combat skills still showed, and with a final swing, he cut down the Death Guard Lord. With their chain of command disrupted, the Death Guard assault began to grind to a shuddering halt. The Space Marines pursued the faltering warriors of Nurgle as they retreated, putting hundreds of them to the sword and chasing them from the planet's surface. The Silver Templars had carried the day, but the event had driven a wedge between the swords of Novaris and their Nova Marines allies. Their attack had left gaps in the Space Marine lines, and the Nova Marines had been surrounded and nearly overwhelmed by hordes of advancing Plague Marines. Captain Lobos had lost fully half of his warriors after the Silver Templars charged from their positions. He did not mask his fury at the Silver Templars' failure to obey direct orders. Captain Lobos grieved at the devastating losses his men had suffered, and vowed never to forgive or forget the disobedient and reckless behavior of the Silver Templars. Captain Patricius refused to admit to any error, coldly pointing out that the death of the enemy commander had surely saved the day, and that losses were always acceptable in the pursuit of victory. This argument did little to calm Lobos, who, at the conclusion of the conflict, left the planet in disgust. Despite both chapters being scions of Guilliman, a bitter enmity would linger between many members of the two chapters from then on. During the Indomitus Crusade, a Silver Templars strike force found refuge on the industrial planet Nechthys. Grateful for the assistance of the locals, the Silver Templars swore a sword oath to protect Nechthys. Several decades later, this oath would be fulfilled. High in the mountains of Novaris, at the peak of the fortress monastery Colossus, Chief Librarian Ionis was awoken from his meditation by a powerful vision. His mind raced with scenes of rampaging green-skinned warriors, cleaving axes, and the death cries of outmatched human defenders. A single name came to his lips, Nechthys. Immediately, he recalled an oath of protection sworn many years ago. As the vision faded, Ionis raced from his chambers. He knew the sword oath must be fulfilled. Alerting Chapter Master Zanaris to the danger, he offered to lead the forces of the 2nd and 3rd Companies to Nechthys and fulfill the chapter's oath by rescuing the stricken planet from an invasion of deadly orcs. Such was the intensity of Ionis's astropathic vision that he considered more than an entire battle company necessary to combat the threat. Upon arrival in the Nechthys system, it became clear that his decision had been wise. Dozens of ramshackle orc vessels drifted lazily in orbit above the planet. They began pivoting to face the newly arrived Space Marines. The Silver Templars fleet moved in to attack, launching dropships as they began blasting orc vessels to pieces. Ionis scanned the surface of Nechthys and began directing operations from the bridge of the strike cruiser Novarian Dawn. The orcs had broken the planet's meager defenses, leaving most of the survivors trapped in the remains of the capital, Nekthy's city. A force would be sent to bolster the city, while Iona's and Second Company Command would concentrate on splitting the Orc forces and eliminating their leadership. The initial strike met with great success. Inceptors hammered the Orc lines, punching through the greenskins, targeting Orc leaders and causing the Orcs to lose what little discipline they possessed. Reavers landed in the no-man's land between forces, striking at Orc command assets and disrupting their supply routes. If the Space Marines had expected a swift victory, however, they were to be sorely disappointed. The Orcs regrouped, showing greater tactical ability and toughness than any greenskins the Silver Templars had fought before. At their fore strode giant Orc knobs, their arms covered in the carapaces of fallen Xenos creatures, crude weapons dealing death amidst the Silver Templars' battle line. Lieutenant Maniakis' demi-company held their position atop the city walls as best they could, but they were being thinned at every turn. Scores of precious Space Marine lives were lost amidst the carnage, and every Orc they slew seemed to be replaced by a dozen more. The trophies the Orcs carried marked them as freebooters that had been hardened in battle against hundreds of enemies across the galaxy. They were experienced and would not break easily. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing and leaving a comment below.